What remained was not a style. It was absence. Absence of preference, absence of hesitation, absence of internal debate. From this absence came precision. Do not misunderstand this. Emptiness is not confusion. It is clarity unburdened. When the mind is full, perception narrows. You see what you expect. You miss what is. In emptiness, perception widens. You notice the shift of weight before the strike, the change in breath before movement, the pause that betrays doubt. These signs are always present, but only the empty mind sees them. I did not seek to read minds, I watched bodies. The body never lies, but it speaks quietly. Only stillness hears it. This way of being is not limited to combat. Life presses like an opponent who never rests. Work demands decision. Conflict invites reaction. Fear waits for attention. Thought multiplies under pressure. Most people meet these forces with fullness. They carry stories, regret, expectation, urgency. Then they wonder why they are always behind. The mind crowded with noise cannot respond cleanly. When you enter your work with attachment to outcome, you telegraph desperation. When you enter conflict with anger, you surrender distance. When you face fear with resistance, you give it weight. The principle remains unchanged. Emptiness leaves no opening. To act without clinging is to act freely. To decide without self-interest is to decide correctly. This does not mean indifference, it means alignment. The archer does not argue with the target. He releases when the line is true. So too with life. Stand where you are. See what is in front of you. Remove what is unnecessary. Do not add courage, remove fear. Do not add confidence, remove doubt. Do not add speed, remove delay. This is the work. It is not accomplished once, it is practiced endlessly. Each day you will notice new clutter. Each day you must cut it away. The sword teaches this because it allows no excess. A single error ends the lesson permanently. That is why the way of the sword reveals truth quickly. But the same truth governs all action. When the mind is empty, the enemy, external or internal, finds nothing to exploit. No anger to provoke, no fear to threaten, no pride to bait. Only presence, and presence is unassailable. The opening does not exist, and where there is no opening, there is no defeat. I have been asked many times how one reaches this emptiness. The question itself reveals the obstacle. Men ask as if emptiness is something to acquire, something to grasp, something to achieve. That effort fills the mind again. Emptiness is not reached, it is uncovered, like a blade hidden beneath rust. Each unnecessary thought is corrosion. Each attachment dulls the edge. Each expectation adds weight where none is needed. You do not polish a sword by striking it harder. You polish by removing what should not be there. This is why most training fails. Men train to impress themselves. They count repetitions. They measure progress. They narrate their effort. All narration is noise. In combat, narration kills. The moment you say now, the moment has passed. The moment you think strike, the strike is late. Action must arise without announcement.
When I faced an opponent, I did not tell myself to be calm. I did not remind myself to breathe. I did not summon courage. Those who summon something reveal that it is missing. Instead, I removed interference. I let the body stand. I let the breath fall where it wished. I let the eyes rest without hunting. When nothing is forced, everything aligns. This alignment is what men mistake for confidence. Confidence is loud, alignment is silent. One is seen, the other is felt. Your enemy does not need to understand emptiness. He only needs to sense that something is wrong. He will feel no pressure to push against, no weakness to attack, no emotion to exploit. This makes him impatient. Impatience creates openings. I did not create openings, I allowed them to appear. This is the difference between control and dominance. Control requires effort, dominance emerges from stillness. In the stillness, you see the whole field. Most men look only at what threatens them, the blade, the voice, the consequence. They shrink inward. Emptiness expands outward. You feel the space behind the enemy, the ground beneath both of you, the silence around the clash. You are not trapped inside the moment exists inside you. This is not mystical, it is practical. When perception widens, options multiply. And when you are not attached to any option, the correct one appears. Attachment narrows choice. This applies to every form of struggle. In work, men cling to plans. When conditions shift, they freeze or force. Emptiness adjusts. In conflict, men cling to being right. When challenged, they escalate. Emptiness disengages without retreating. In fear, men cling to safety. They avoid, delay, rationalize. Emptiness steps forward without bravado. The pattern is always the same. What you cling to becomes your weakness. The enemy may be a man with a sword, or time, or uncertainty, or your own thoughts. The form changes, the law does not. I learned this law not from books, but from watching men fail. I saw skilled fighters undone by anger, strong fighters undone by impatience, brave fighters undone by pride. Each was full of something. I survived because I carried nothing. This does not mean you lack intention. Intention exists, but it is not loud. It is like the tension in a drawn bow before release, present, contained, unannounced. The mistake is to confuse emptiness with passivity. Emptiness is active readiness. The blade resting in the sheath is not asleep, it is complete. When the moment demands it, it leaves the sheath without resistance. If you must convince yourself to act, you are not ready. If you must suppress emotion, you are not empty. Suppression is force, emptiness is absence. This distinction matters. Many men attempt calm by tightening control. They harden their breath, they stiffen posture, they lock the mind. This creates fragility. Under sudden pressure, it shatters. True emptiness remains flexible. It bends without losing shape. It moves without losing balance. This is why I studied not only the sword, but the body.
When the body is aligned, the mind quiets. When the mind quiets, emptiness appears naturally. You cannot think your way into emptiness. You must move correctly until thinking is unnecessary. This requires discipline, not discipline of force, discipline of repetition. Doing the same thing correctly until it no longer requires attention. When attention is freed, perception sharpens. Then emptiness holds. Most abandon this process too early. They want insight without labor, stillness without fatigue, freedom without constraint. The way does not permit this. You must earn emptiness by exhausting excess. Only after the body learns does the mind release. This is why solitude matters. Noise fills the mind with borrowed urgency. Solitude reveals what remains when nothing is demanded. Alone, you hear your own impatience, your need to fill space, your discomfort with silence. These are openings, not for an enemy, but for error. If you cannot stand alone without distraction, you cannot stand firm under pressure. The duel begins long before the opponent arrives. It begins in how you walk, how you sit, how you wait.
Waiting is the great test. Men hate waiting because it exposes fullness. They reach for thought, for memory, for anticipation. Emptiness waits without reaching. This is why I say readiness is living without delay. Delay is born from internal debate. When the mind is empty, there is no debate. There is only response. And response, when unobstructed, is immediate. This immediacy feels like speed to those who hesitate, but it is not speed, it is absence of friction. A blade does not cut because it is fast, it cuts because nothing blocks its edge. So too with action. Remove what blocks you. Remove the need to be seen. Remove the fear of being wrong. Remove the habit of rehearsing outcomes. Stand, breathe, observe. When the moment arrives, move. And when you move, move completely. No second thoughts, no internal commentary. One action, clean, final. This is how emptiness leaves no opening, not by avoiding conflict, but by meeting it with nothing that can be taken from you. There is another misunderstanding that must be cut away. Many believe emptiness is a state reached only in battle or crisis. They think it appears when danger sharpens the senses. This is backwards. What appears only under pressure cannot be trusted. Pressure does not create truth. It reveals what was already there. If your mind is crowded in ordinary moments, it will collapse in extraordinary ones. Emptiness must be lived when nothing is at stake. When you rise, when you walk, when you eat, when you wait, especially when nothing demands your attention. This is why I valued mundane discipline, sweeping the floor correctly, tying the sandals without haste, sitting without shifting. These acts seem small, they are not. They teach the body to move without impatience. They teach the mind to remain where it is. A man who cannot sit still when nothing happens will not be still when everything happens.
In combat, the smallest disturbance inside you becomes magnified. A flicker of doubt widens into hesitation. A spark of anger becomes recklessness. A desire to end the fight becomes carelessness. Emptiness prevents this chain from forming because there is nothing to grow. I learned to notice the first stirrings, the urge to hurry, the need to confirm, the wish to dominate. These are openings. They feel harmless. They are not. The enemy needs very little: a breath out of place, a weight shift too early, an eye that lingers. Once, in a duel, I saw my opponent tighten his jaw before moving. That single tension told me everything. He was committed before the moment was ripe. I waited. When he struck, his body was already spent. I did not outmuscle him. I did not outthink him. I simply did not arrive early. This is the advantage of emptiness. You arrive only when required. Most men arrive everywhere too soon. They prepare speeches before words are needed. They defend positions before they are attacked. They exhaust themselves fighting shadows. Emptiness conserves strength. It wastes nothing. In life, this is rare. People carry yesterday into today. They carry imagined futures into the present. They fight battles that do not exist. Then, when the real moment comes, they are already tired. This fatigue is not physical, it is mental saturation. The mind clogged with unresolved thought loses sensitivity. Like fingers numbed by cold, it can no longer feel subtlety. And subtlety decides outcomes. The sword fight is decided long before blades touch. So is every serious matter. When you enter a difficult conversation full of words you intend to say, you stop listening. When you approach a decision obsessed with consequences,
you stop seeing options. When you face fear while rehearsing failure, you become slow. Emptiness restores sensitivity. It allows you to feel the moment as it unfolds, not as you imagine it. This requires trust, not blind trust. Trust in preparation stripped of excess. Trust that what remains will act correctly. Many men do not trust themselves enough to be empty, so they cling. They cling to rules, to habits, to identity. Identity is the heaviest burden. When you insist on being a certain kind of person, you restrict response. I am calm. I am strong. I am disciplined. These statements harden into masks. Under pressure, masks crack. I never carried an image of myself into battle, not as a warrior, not as a master, not as anything. I was simply there. This made adaptation natural. If you must protect an identity, you hesitate to violate it. Emptiness has nothing to protect. Therefore, it moves freely. This freedom is not reckless, it is precise. Precision comes from seeing clearly, not from planning extensively. I planned in training, I executed without plan. This distinction matters. Training builds structure, emptiness uses it. If you attempt emptiness without structure, you drift. If you cling to structure without emptiness, you freeze. The balance is strict. Structure without attachment, form without fixation. This is the way of the sword.
And the way of living. Many search for shortcuts to emptiness. They sit and wait for silence. They force calm. They imitate stillness. This fails. Stillness is not imposed. It emerges when resistance ends. Resistance to boredom, resistance to discomfort, resistance to uncertainty. If you resist these, the mind thrashes. If you allow them, the mind settles. I learned this in long journeys, walking alone for days. No destination worth mentioning, no audience. At first, the mind races. It invents urgency. It replays encounters. It plans imaginary futures. If you follow it, it never stops. If you let it exhaust itself, something changes. Thought thins. Awareness widens. You begin to notice wind direction, foot placement, your own breathing. Not deliberately, naturally. This natural attention is emptiness. It is not blank, it is open. Open awareness leaves no opening for intrusion, because nothing is hidden. Fear thrives in what is unseen. Doubt grows in ambiguity. Emptiness exposes everything. In exposure, threats lose power, not because they disappear, but because they are seen clearly. Clear sight removes exaggeration. Most suffering comes from imagined scale. Emptiness restores proportion. The opponent is just a man. The task is just a task. The moment is just a moment. Nothing more, nothing less. When you see this, action simplifies. Simplicity is not reduction for comfort. It is reduction for effectiveness. Remove what does not serve the moment. Every moment has a demand, not many. Your task is to perceive that demand and meet it fully. Nothing extra. Extra thought weakens commitment. Extra emotion blurs judgment. Extra movement wastes time. The sword teaches economy. One step too many exposes the flank. One swing too wide reveals the wrist. So too in life. Say only what is required. Decide only what is necessary. Move only when it matters. Emptiness enforces this economy, because when nothing is held, nothing spills. This is why emptiness leaves no opening.
Not because you are invulnerable, but because you are aligned. Alignment closes gaps naturally. I did not seek invulnerability. I accepted death early. This acceptance emptied many things. Fear lost its grip. Urgency faded. Ego loosened. When death is accepted, many problems dissolve. You stop negotiating with reality. You meet it. This meeting is clean, and in cleanliness, strength appears. Not the strength of force, the strength of inevitability. When you move from emptiness, your action feels final, not dramatic, complete. There is no correction afterward.
No regret, no replay, because nothing was divided. This is what I mean when I say emptiness leaves no opening, not for the enemy, not for doubt, not for regret. Only action remains, clear, unobstructed, true. When I speak of emptiness, I do not speak of removing thought entirely. I speak of removing interference. Thought has its place. It belongs before the encounter. It belongs after. It does not belong within. During the moment of action, thought is a delay. Even a small delay becomes decisive. This is why I warned against favoring any single method. A man who relies on one technique searches for its opportunity. While he searches, he stops seeing. Emptiness does not search. It responds. When you search, you impose your will on the moment. When you respond, you align with it. Alignment always arrives faster than intention. I did not defeat opponents by predicting them. Prediction assumes stability. Men are unstable. Emotion alters rhythm. Fear distorts timing. Hope corrupts judgment. Emptiness observes without assuming. Because it assumes nothing, it is never surprised. Surprise is what defeats most men, not the enemy's strength, the unexpected angle, the broken rhythm, the hesitation where none was planned. If your mind is empty, surprise has no place to land. There is nothing inside you to shock. The mind that expects nothing accepts everything. This acceptance is not surrender. It is readiness without condition. I learned to face each encounter as if it were unique. No comparison, no memory, no anticipation. Each duel was new. Even against familiar styles, I treated the moment as unknown. The moment is always unknown. Those who rely on experience alone become rigid. They fight the past. Emptiness fights the present. This distinction separates survival from defeat. In life, the same error repeats endlessly. People react to what once happened, not to what is happening. They speak to old arguments. They fear old losses. They pursue old victories. They are never where they stand. Emptiness places you here, and here is where action matters. The mind that wanders creates gaps. Gaps invite intrusion. Pressure enters where attention is absent. This is why discipline is not harshness. It is consistency of presence. Returning attention again and again. Not forcing it, returning it. When attention wanders, notice. Return. When emotion rises, notice. Return. When thought accelerates, notice. Return. Return does not mean suppress. It means release. Release is lighter than force. Force creates tension. Tension creates predictability. Predictability creates openings. I avoided predictable patterns not by randomness, but by emptiness. Randomness is another form of control. Emptiness,
is freedom.
Freedom does not mean chaos. It means unrestricted response. In sword work, this appears as effortless movement. The body turns where it must. The blade meets resistance exactly where it appears, no earlier, no later. This timing cannot be calculated. It can only be allowed by emptiness. This is why I say emptiness is not passive. It is alert without strain, like a cat resting before a leap. Nothing wasted, nothing forced, total availability. When the leap happens, it is complete. There is no halfway. Half action is hesitation. Hesitation is an opening. I trained to eliminate half action. Either act or do not. But when you act, act fully. This requires courage, but not the loud kind. Quiet courage. The courage to not decorate your action with justification, to move without applause, to accept outcome without complaint. Complaining fills the mind again. So does pride. Victory tempts fullness. Defeat tempts fullness. Both must be met the same way, with emptiness. After a duel, I did not replay the fight. I did not savor victory. I did not rehearse error. I cleaned my blade. Then I walked on. Attachment to outcome breeds repetition. Emptiness allows renewal. Each moment deserves a fresh mind. This freshness is rare. Most minds are stale, reused reactions, recycled thoughts. Stale minds cannot adapt. Adaptation requires openness. Openness requires emptiness. When you hold no position internally, you can occupy any position externally. This is true strength, not stubbornness. Stubbornness is a failure of perception. The rigid man believes strength lies in refusing to bend. He breaks. The empty man bends without choosing to. He survives. But survival is not the goal. Correct action is. Correct action emerges when perception is clear. Perception clears when the mind is unburdened. This is the path I walked, not because it was comfortable, because it was necessary. The sword demands honesty. It reveals self-deception instantly. Life does the same, but more slowly. This delay allows people to persist in error. They blame circumstances. They blame others. They blame fate. The swordsman has no such luxury. Error is immediate, final. This finality sharpens understanding. I learned to treat life with the same seriousness, not grimness, seriousness, attention without indulgence. This seriousness removes frivolous thought. What remains is emptiness. And emptiness, when lived, is not hollow. It is full of awareness. Awareness fills the space without cluttering it, like clear air. Clear air carries sound farther. Clear awareness carries perception deeper. This depth reveals what matters, and what matters is usually simple. Where to stand, when to move, when to wait. Most complexity is invented. Emptiness dissolves invention. When invention dissolves, truth stands plainly. Plain truth requires no defense. It does not argue. It acts. This is the way. If you wish to leave no opening, do not harden yourself. Soften by removing what is unnecessary. Do not fill your mind. Empty it. Stand in that emptiness without fear. From there, every movement is correct, and no enemy, outside or within, can find a place to enter. Emptiness leaves no opening.
Before the sword is raised, there is a moment that belongs to no one. I have stood in that moment many times, alone. The ground quiet beneath my feet, the air unmoving, the enemy breathing somewhere beyond sight. In that moment, nothing has begun, yet everything is decided. Most men fill this space with noise, thought, expectation, fear, desire to win. I did not. I learned early that the opening you give the enemy is not in your stance, nor in the angle of your blade. It is in what you carry inside. When the mind is crowded, the body leaks in tension. The shoulders tighten, the eyes chase, the breath shortens. The enemy feels it before he sees it. Emptiness leaves no opening. This is not an idea, it is an experience paid for with blood and long solitude. I walked the path alone so I could see this clearly. When I was young, I believed strength lived in technique. Then I believed it lived in speed, then in courage. Each belief broke under pressure. Technique falters when the mind interferes. Speed collapses when timing is wrong. Courage turns reckless when it seeks recognition. What remains when all these fall away is emptiness. Not weakness, not hesitation, but the absence of obstruction. Consider water in a mountain stream. It does not plan its path. It does not resist stone. It moves because there is nothing in it that says otherwise. When you stand before an opponent, the same law applies. If you are thinking of winning, you have already stepped out of position. If you are afraid of losing, your blade is already slow. If you are watching yourself act, you are late. The enemy does not defeat you, your fullness does. I trained until movement occurred without consultation, until the body answered before the mind spoke, until the sword rose not because I decided, but because there was no reason not to. This is emptiness. In battle, distance is not measured only by feet. There is the distance of attention, the distance of intent, the distance between impulse and action. Most men shorten these distances with force. I removed them entirely. When nothing is held, nothing is exposed. I observed this not only in duels, but in nature. The wind passes through the valley without leaving its mark. The valley does not prepare for it. Because it is empty, it survives every storm. The tree that stiffens breaks, the one that yields remains. But yielding is not retreat. Emptiness is not softness. It is readiness without tension. When I faced an opponent, I did not stare at his blade. I did not measure his strength. I did not imagine his next move. I stood as if already finished with the fight. This unsettles men. They seek something to grasp: aggression, fear, pride. When they find none, their rhythm collapses. Rhythm governs all encounters. A man out of rhythm fights himself before he fights you. Emptiness disrupts rhythm because it offers no beat to follow. When you breathe calmly while another man rushes, time bends in your favor, not because you are faster, but because he is late. I learned to let the moment speak first. The sword does not need commentary. The body does not need encouragement, only silence. Training was not about adding, it was about removing wasted movement, removing decorative thought, removing the desire to appear skilled. When you wish to appear skilled, you perform. When you perform, you are visible. When you are visible, you are predictable. Emptiness cannot be predicted.
In solitude, I stripped myself down to what remained under repetition: days of walking, nights of sitting, hours of cutting the same motion into the air.